Lovely. Well, I think we've got everyone joined now, so I shall start off. One of my first questions for you was if you could just talk me through exactly what a peer group is to you and sort of what it means.
That's yeah, good question. So to me, peer groups are about a place where you can put people who are equal in a room where they can help each other. My experience of peer groups was essentially a place where you show what you do to educate others. So what you do well, you can kind of teach them, and you learn more about your own process by teaching them. So
Mm.
they're kind of equal people who want to help each other.
Okay, and why are you directing it specifically towards IT managers?
So, like any business, you've got to find out what there's a need for. And I spent a bit of time working with IT managers, and I found that they kind of didn't have this resource. They tend to be a little kind of isolated anyway.
Mm.
And so it was about finding a way to be able to get IT managers who typically hide away in their office, get them together to help each other. So we're essentially facilitating IT managers who wouldn't necessarily run into other people in their own walks of life to meet each other, a need.
Okay, so that means they didn't exist before then.
I couldn't find any. I genuinely, I did plenty of research, and because it's very specific. The advantage of this being for IT managers, IT directors,
Mhm.
is they can talk about their need to provide a budget or technology standards. They can talk about that, but they also today they ended up being a conversation about IP addressing, and it's like that's not going to mean anything to a general business mastermind group, but it means a lot to a group of techs who
Mm.
that was something they needed to deal with.
Okay, brilliant. And how do you feel you're qualified to sort of deliver this service?
Okay, so I've been in peer groups, so I've been the other side of the table. I think that's probably the reason why I was able to identify the gap, is because I've been the other side of the table where I've been, one of 8 or 10 people who've been looking to help each other, and I've done that in business forums, and I've also done that within IT organisations, but
Mhm.
more like managed service providers, like you represent.
Yeah.
So that was interesting for me, and I think knowing enough about the business side of running peer groups, I've also run peer groups before for MSPs, helped me understand what would make a successful model for internal IT managers and directors.
Okay, so I'm quite experienced in that area, so that's great. And obviously, we've talked about why you started the groups. Can you talk me through what an IT manager might expect to get from the experience?
Yeah, I did a webinar on this topic.
Okay.
It was kind of 10 main kind of headline things, and I'll run through them. So referring to my list because I don't want to get it wrong. So the first thing was about issues, was about the kind of the problems that they face on a day-to-day basis, and to be able to be in a room where they've all got the same kind of problems. The second one was about challenges. So that's about what's their current problem today? What's the thing they're stuck with? As in, that gets in the way. That's probably the biggest obstacle for you.
Mm.
The accountability, that once you actually leave the room and you've made some agreement of what you need to do, are you going to do it? Are you going to do that within the 30, 60, 90 days that we've set up as a structure? Are you actually going to complete? Because if you don't complete it, that's going to set everything else you've got up back. We've then got strategy. So having a defined kind of plan as to where you're going for you, the IT within your company. We're assuming that IT managers have some autonomy to be able to plan what the future of IT looks like for their organizations. So having a strategy of what you need to do and by when might be really important when it comes to things like compliance. So having a wider perspective, so having a room of people who are a bit like you means that they'll call call you out on things. They've done it before. Some of them will have done what you're trying to do already, and so will have an opinion. And those that haven't done it yet probably need to. If you take, for example, the security chasm that exists, where people aren't necessarily doing everything they need to, they're all on a journey, and some are further ahead than others. Best practice. So some people are very good at some of the things that they do. And so what we do is we get members to share what they do that's amazing with the rest of the group, so as the rest of the group can take a little bit from that. And so each quarter within the meetings, we get one of the members to share a best practice. So that's quite interesting. Personal development. So continual professional development ideas, the idea that people kind of can't really rest in an environment like IT. It's particularly moving, so it's important that they're doing things that develop them, and a lot of that can come out of their work within the peer groups. And I'm almost there. Budget. If the IT manager doesn't set the budget, who does? The person who's going to come up with the right budget number should be the IT manager, because the IT manager's got the best idea of what they need to be spending next year. And in fact, our next peer group meeting is on the specialist topic of budget, so about budget setting for 3 and 5 year plans, so as you don't surprise the finance director with some spend request that's unreasonable in their opinion. Facilitation. So peer groups are properly facilitated. You get somebody like me, and I've got a number of people lined up for the growth of the peer groups to be able to take on some of those facilitation roles. So somebody who knows how to bring the meeting in on time and to make sure that it marks its objectives and everybody's got clarity of next steps. And then lastly, before I take a breath, vendor interaction. So the idea that suppliers come along and help with the education piece. So we get some suppliers who come along and tell us about best practices from the things that they do, which is up to the members. They can take from that what they want, but we make sure that the vendors realise they're coming there to educate, they're not coming to pitch. So they bring along their best skills to be able to help the members advance their own knowledge. So that kind of summarises what they can expect from coming to a group. Sorry, Jess, that was an awfully long.
No, absolutely perfect answer. I do want to pick at that answer a little bit. You mentioned there about vendors. How would you select those?
Carefully. Some are brilliant. I'm looking for people who realise that they will do best by being supportive, by being educational. So if in my early conversations with the vendors, they look like all they're after is a sale, then I don't bring them into the room. And the great thing about doing that properly is those that get the community we're building here win. That they do best, because when you're looking for a supplier, when you're looking for a vendor, you'll go with the one you like, and they're the one you know, because they're the one who turned up and spoke to you whilst you ate your sandwiches and engaged with you.
And also best practices as well. I thought that one was really key. I don't know if you're able to give us an example at all of some of the best practices that might come out of some of the meetings.
Yeah, I'd say we're 6 meetings in, so these groups are new this year, but we've had some amazing best practice sessions already. One of the members delivered a session on Power BI, and so talked about best practice around configuring data analysis using Power BI, something that is included within your Office 365 subscription anyway. It was kind of showing you what you could do with the tools you've already got on your desk to give some level of reporting. We had another member do a session on network topology best practices, and so he shared what he does within his organization and how he puts his network diagrams together, his network planning together. As far as the vendors, we've had lots of stuff on threat landscape changing, and we've had security policies and procedures and like security framework stuff. So where people don't know where to start with their security, we're pulling people in who can kind of help them on that journey. So, and it's magical. The other thing about the best practice I didn't mention earlier, Jess, is they're short. So each of these little installments are only 30 minutes ago. So it's a case of taking all of that great knowledge and bundling it down to 30 minutes you can use, that you can come away with some good bullet points of, I'm going to go back to my office and look at that thing.
Some key nuggets of information.
Right. And it's only by making it nuggets does it become consumable. I'm not saying you should eat nuggets. I don't eat nuggets, but education nuggets, bring them down to the smallest so as it just becomes easy to be able to, manage.
Mm-hmm. And this might sound like a bit of a funny question, but surely the members could just Google some of the answers that they get from these peer groups.
Jess, they probably do today. Yeah. And, and we know that the answers are out there. I mean, whenever I have an ache or a pain, I Google it. I mean, Google's got its place. I think there's a problem with, I mentioned earlier on, isolation. I mean, it's professional isolation. These people are frightened that they don't know the answers to stuff, so they'll Google it rather than admit to somebody that they don't know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
What these peer groups do is allow them to feel that they're kind of the same as the other guys around the table. I mean, there's a phrase, misery loves company. And that's the reason why these meetings are properly facilitated, because you can't spiral down. You've got to kind of make sure these people are kind of coming away with the answers. Googling it has a place, but actually experience is going to win over. And particularly when I look at some of the sensitive conversations that go on in the room, the things that kind of unite these people.
Okay, and one question I have actually got written down here, but can you talk me through the capacity for growth? Sort of how many new members could you sign up?
It's a great question. Something I didn't mention earlier is I tend to find that peer groups run really well up to about 8 people in the room, 8 people and a facilitator. So every time I spin up another group of up to 8 people, I need another facilitator. I've got a few lined up, facilitators, so I've got capacity to grow. And as we continue to find members, I'll find quality facilitators. The facilitators I'm after they tend to be business consultant people who have lived a little. They understand how to get the best out of a meeting. They don't need to be IT gurus. They just need to know when the topic is going off track. So capacity, I'm not worried about. But at this point, I don't particularly want 2 members who are in each other's pocket. I don't think that's helpful, particularly if they're in the same industry and they're competitive. But make sure that people aren't, if they're in competition with people, we won't put them in the same group unless they want to be. If they both want to be, then great.
Okay, and you obviously mentioned about members there. In terms of location, what would you do if a member was sort of too far away?
Okay, so currently the group is meeting physically each quarter. So they meet for a whole day once a quarter, and the other 2 months they just do a 90-minute kind of Zoom check-in call, which is working really well. The physical meeting is great, but if what I end up with is some members who are at far-flung ends of the country, I'm not ruling out the idea of doing virtual only. I think this last 18 months has shown us that there's quite a lot you can do virtually. Who knew?
Indeed.
So my plan is, as I grow this, I may well have virtual groups that are running until I get enough members in an area that I can turn it into a physical meeting. The advantage of physical meetings, just whilst we're on that topic, is that they can kind of meet some of the names that they hear about in the meeting. All the meetings are Chatham House rules. What goes on in the room stays in the room. But when they're talking about particular characters that they work with, it's really nice when you get to meet some of them, because then you can feel the pain that they're working with. That arrogant boss who runs in and tells you why you should do something the way they want it done rather than the right way. And you only really experience that when you kind of get to meet some of these people kind of firsthand. So in answer, from a growth point of view, from a distance point of view, I think we've kind of got it covered. If we can get in the room physically, it's good, but it's not the end of the world. And we started these groups virtually, as I'm sure you can understand.
Yeah, definitely. And Obviously, I think you mentioned at the start how often they are, but can you just clarify that for me
I
exactly how
can, yeah.
often those meetings happen?
Yeah, so meeting every month, and meeting on the third Wednesday of every month,
Hmm.
and the January and April and July and October meeting is in person, and that's a whole day. And all the other meetings are just 90-minute check-ins, 10 till 11:30 check-ins. Very, very much keeping on time target. It needs to be respectful of time, so we're in and out within those 90 minutes. And again, the whole day is a whole day, so you need to commit to being at wherever the meeting is, or if it's a virtual one, being available for it for the whole day. We kind of expect people to be present, so they can't be doing their emails whilst they're actually kind of pretending to be in a meeting, because they need to be in the other members' lives, understand what they're going through to be able to help them. That kind of makes sense. So
Yeah.
every month, third Wednesday, and they're all at the same time, because it may well be at some point down the line we can get a kind of once a year where we pull everybody together and have a bit of a party. That might be a nice idea, to pull one big meeting in the middle, because there's amazing amounts you can learn by meeting with your peers, as I said.
Okay. And you mentioned about with the members that you've obviously already had a few meetings with them. I know that ITers can sometimes be a bit introverted. How have you found people coping in the peer groups?
Uh, both in these and in my previous experience of peer groups, the magic happens once people are willing to be open.
Hmm.
And openness can sometimes come with anger, frustration, or tears. And actually, it's just something you kind of have to deal with. But it's a safe environment. So
Hmm.
I think it's about building that relationship where people feel supported, and having 8 regular members, 8 people who are coming to every month's meeting, 8 people who are all communicating together in the same, one chat group. They
Hmm.
start to feel for each other's pains, and so you can support that interestedness. And so most introverts are not introvert with everybody. They just have less friends than the extroverts, but they're more close to them. So
Mm.
actually it works well. You put a few people in a room, they care for each other. And that's what we're seeing within these peer groups. Does that answer that, Jess?
Definitely. So are you finding that communication within the peer groups is really helping?
Yeah, and I think communication is a real problem for some of these people,
Mm.
because, and maybe it's the introvertedness, but sometimes they struggle to take back those messages to their managing directors or finance directors. So, if you take, for example, I mentioned earlier about budget setting, sometimes it's the fact that they just don't have the words to be able to go and talk to their managing director,
Mm.
because they've never needed to. So helping people with communication, both within the group and actually how they take those skills to be able to go and work with the people they need to work with.
Hmm.
Often, and you must be able to see it in your working life, where you go, if the communication was a little better, we wouldn't have had to do that twice.
Definitely.
There's that kind of, and so communication is key across all of it. You just
Hmm.
need to use your word tin. If you were at
Use your
school,
words.
talk all those words, use them. Yeah.
Brilliant. And in your experience, this is my next question. What do all new members have in common, do you find?
Okay. Um, you're kind of asking me to be sweepingly general on it. Communication, I mentioned. Um, I think a lack of preparedness. I think they're too caught up in the day to day. IT managers typically are head down doing the thing they need to do. So lacking strategy, lacking budget, and not knowing what the first step is to try and put those things in place.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I guess with that level of confusion, joining a peer group, they're in about the right place. It's about the right time to join, and to realise that actually they won't be alone. They're not going to turn up and find that everybody there's got it sorted, because they're all
Mm.
kind of on a journey and helping each other to be able to achieve kind of those things.
So come with
But
your questions is key.
sorry.
Coming with your questions is
Oh,
key.
yeah, absolutely. Being open to being able to kind of understand they don't know it all.
Mm.
Well, we have an amazing tool in the meetings when people come in with their challenge. And what we do is we allow the member to say what their challenge is. And then everybody in the group gets to ask qualifying questions. So the extra detail they maybe didn't cover off, the what have you tried kind of questions that are addressing that challenge. So everybody in the group now gets a really good idea of what the real challenge is. And then once everybody's finished that, they go to a diagnostic. And so everybody then gets the opportunity to give some advice. Advice based on experience overrides advice based on there being no experience in the room. So if somebody's going to give advice and they've never done it, they need to be able to go, right, here's my advice, but I've never tried this. As in, if the advice is go and punch the boss in the face, I've never tried it, but maybe I would suggest that's not great advice. Whereas if the advice is kind of more from well, actually what I did was I prepared a report, I put it in front of my boss and explained why I need to spend some time with them to talk about this report, that would probably be better advice. And,
yes.
and if they've done that and proved it worked and that they got more time from their boss and the boss understood where they're trying to take IT, strategy and compliance and all the kind of good things we spoke about earlier, that kind of helps.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. All that sounds absolutely brilliant, but I'm sure everyone will want to know, how much does this cost them?
Oh, marketing speak, it's too cheap. Right. It's £100 per month, paid by direct debit or a regular standing order. And that's almost it. That gets you the membership, the facilitation, the meetings. It gets you the tools. There's a few bits and pieces for document sharing and communication. So all of that comes for the £100 a month. The only addition is that the quarterly meetings that are in person are hosted. And so if it's your turn to host, in addition to your subs, you're also going to have to buy the sandwiches. It'll be your meeting room, and you can get this. Well, and that's the challenge, Jess, right? How good the hosting is has to do with how good the sandwiches are. So we were up in London for the last meeting, and we were exceptionally well looked after. We're in Broadstairs for the next meeting, and the bar has been set. So the chap in Broadstairs is going to have to kind of make a good effort to put a good show on. Let's see how that works. But the important thing about getting together is the meeting. So I jest, a few curly sandwiches is kind of all you need to lay on. So £100 a month should be the kind of money that most IT managers can get signed off easily. And from what we're seeing, it's providing a return that means that people are not really questioning the money.
Okay, and obviously time being the other factor, how much time do you feel people need to invest in this?
Yeah, so and this is really difficult, and I've had this question in the other peer groups that I've been involved in, where people worry about the commitment of time. The time for the meetings is small. As I said, you've got a whole day that could be a meeting you need to travel for. You've got these two 90-minute check-ins, but you're going to end up with homework. You're going to end up with things you've committed to do. If you said, I'm going to document the network, then you obviously need to put some time aside to document your network. If you're going to come up with a bring your own device policy, and you've said that by the time we next meet, I'll have my bring your own device policy, then that's going to take some time. That's not really the peer group's fault that you need to spend time doing your bring your own device policy, because you probably should have had one anyway. So just being a member of the peer group, a day and two 90-minute sessions every quarter, but actually the homework, the stuff that's going to move the business you work for forward, is going to take more time. And then what we do as a peer group is make sure you don't overcommit. If we know the type of job you've got and you say, I know I'm going to do all of this, then we'll kind of rein it in and say, don't try and boil the ocean, boil a saucepan of water. You know, just do a thing that you can do by the next meeting rather than pretend you can do it all.
All right, lovely. Well, thank you so much for answering all my questions. The last thing I did want to ask, because it all sounds brilliant, is just the joining process. So anyone watching right now wants to join, how would they do that?
In the first instance, drop me an email, gareth@itcircles.co.uk. We can have a one-to-one call and I can give you some answers to anything that you kind of missing. I would rather make sure that this is right for you, as well as, you know, you wanted to join the peer groups. You need to kind of be ready to commit to being better and using this as the tool to be able to get there. So once I've spoken to you, I've got an application form, really simple. We'll allocate you into a group. If you can join the group that's running physically now, I'll put you in there. If you're a bit further away, then I'm going to join you into a virtual group I'm starting up now. And I'll introduce you to your facilitator, put you into the group, get all your tools set up. We'll get the payment stuff put in place, so we know you're paying your £100 a month, and welcome you in. So it's really, really simple. There's no big arduous kind of prep. Before your first meeting, we like you to put together a little PowerPoint presentation of who you are, where you're coming from, a little bit about you, so as we can introduce you to the other members, and you'll be able to see everybody else's PowerPoint presentation of the same, so you know a little bit more about the people you'll be joining in with. So kept simple, Gareth at itcircles.co.uk, or grab me on LinkedIn or any other platform.
All right, absolutely brilliant. Let me quickly check the question section. Looks like I haven't missed anything in there at all, and that's all from me. So thank you very much, Gareth, for your time. I really do appreciate that.
Brilliant. Jess, thank you very much for making this painless. It's been lovely spending time with you.
No worries at all. I will speak to you soon.
Okay.
All right, take care. Bye.
Bye.